It is time. Finally, after all the delays and all the no-shows, the DQs and whatever that you get in the first round, we've finally got a series here because Winter Series 3 will open up with best of threes. The final opportunity to, through a smaller tournament, qualify to that big buck tournament, the Winter Championship later this month that will pay out $20,000 in earnings to players. But we are going to open this journey at humble beginnings. KauP versus BageTT, two top 100 players. BageTT just cracking the top 100 and KauP sitting midway up the field around the 50th mark with two follow-up accounts in the top 200. These are two skilled and talented individuals, and I'm looking forward to seeing how this one's going to play out because last time I watched these two in a pub setting, my God, was it pure fire. It was such a close and clutch game. It was not one-sided at all, which is why I'm hoping to not only get a competitive series, but maybe get 3 games. But to begin with, we will be opening up on Dry Arabia. Remember, guys, the way that these Winter Series have worked is each of them has a different starting map. So Lipany was the first one, then we had Highview, and finally now we get to Dry Arabia, or as we know it, El Clásico Map Significo, Age of Empirico 2 and 4. Sorry, I don't know enough whatever I'm speaking to do numbers as well. But yes, we will be beginning with KauP and BageTT. These are going to be best of threes. And remember, the rules are pretty standardized by now. You pick, you ban a Civ. And if you do also play that Civ, you can't play it in the next match, regardless of if you win or lose with it, right? So just remember that. That does mean that England and Abbasids are not going to be available on the next one for these specific players. The interesting part is that they opened up with England Abbasids. So this must be a stylistic approach. I feel like KauP knows BageTT does this because you wouldn't blindly pick Abbasids into, say, France. I don't think that matchup is as good for you. And there's a bunch of other ones that could be very gambling on a map like Dry Arabia. Dry Arabia being so open and easily raidable. The reason it's good against England, however, is although you are somewhat vulnerable in a very spread out open area for England longbows to harass early on, if you can bide your time and offset the aggression, you crack a very quick castle age timing, and then the England player is a headless chicken. Because in this matchup, the whole point is that you crack castle, get access to siege weapons, and then plow across the map with 1 or 2 mangonels. And England doesn't handle that very well. Until you're into castle, a decent way into castle, you don't really produce anything but very static units. Remember, the units you have access to early is going to be a longbowman at 1.12 movement speed per second, and the other ones are going to be a man-at-arms the same, or you go into a spear at 1.25. But if you're going to spears, you're easily counted out by archers. The only time you really want to be going spears as England is as a buffer zone against cavalry spamming civs such as, say, the Rooster they went for early knights, or most definitely for the French. But that's not likely to come out. So opening for BageTT in this game should be heavily invested into the longbow spams. The critical detail is whether he'll bring a villager up quick enough to drop an outpost and he'll start to set up a network. I think if he can choke out critical resources from KauP, he can very easily close out this game 1. But he has to be quick because KauP is already on the stone. So he's already looking to give himself that buffer zone of a second TC, understanding he's going to probably come under fire. This is a really smart play, and he has a lot of defensible area for a second TC here. He got the double tree spawn to his side. I think this is actually preferable in this situation when you're playing multi-TC. You can frontline with your primary TC and then retract the secondary into the fold. Alternatively, you can just understand and respect that's probably going to be a safe zone to play around at all times, and instead use the second TC to expand your influence over all of this food. Look at this. The deers, next wood lines just north of you, double berry, would cover stone for a 3rd TC as well. There's some options available to KauP. But BageTT, that's going to be the question mark. Is he going to be quick enough? Because he's already on his way up into the feudal, and it won't be long before those longbows are coming in to invade the Abbasid side. I think the last time we saw these guys, by the way, it was a mirror matchup, both of them playing Rus, and they played a very different approach to Rus. So intrigued to see if something similar occurs this time around, or if they've just kind of pivoted back to like your standard, because I could easily see the Horse Archer spam coming out from both sides and the Rus being picked in map 2 or 3. So remember, the way this works is loser picks the follow-up map, and there are quite a few available to these players. So to be specific on like the choices, I believe it's pretty much any map, if I'm not mistaken. I think maybe Ancient Spires isn't allowed. Other than that, I'd say it's probably... Maybe they won't allow Warring Islands. I don't really expect people to be like pivoting into Warring Islands. I think, if I recall correctly, last time we definitely had a selection available of Boulder Bay was a very big pick. We started with High View. I think Dry Arabia usually came out at the end, and I assume Lipany is available as well. It's kind of interesting, though, because a lot of players don't seem to choose Lipany, but they choose Dry Arabia. They're very similar maps, but some offer a little bit more of a high point advantage, which you'd think would favor people who want to pick civs like England, just because you're able to utilize that high ground and manipulate your opponents. So BageTT, slowly slogging his way across the map, is almost in position. Now we have to look at the exposed economy for KauP. KauP, right now playing very retracted, is going into stables that he can afford because you do tend to buff yourself very quickly courtesy of this fresh food stuffs, which means you actually got surplus food in reserve after the first few villages, and thus you can invest heavily into horsemen, which are usually a bit pricey. But as it stands right now, pulling back off of the gold line, KauP doesn't need to rush up to castle. Remember, he's not going to be under pressure to clock a timing because he understands that BageTT, showing up with this aggression, is going to be locking himself away from castle as well. So for KauP, the critical detail is that he's able to access that second TC, and he's able to scale it up to a big enough economy that he can risk going out into these gold lines behind his base. If he's able to do that, then BageTT's game becomes very uncomfortable. And you can see with the walls already in place, he's losing flex, and he's losing troops already. I like this play coming out of KauP. It's very important you do this. If you want to shut down England, one of the most critical details, and a big whoopsie there, losing one of the villages, is that you make any sort of progress towards one of your eco sides very slow, right? So think about this way. When you're playing as the French, this sort of walling doesn't really stop you. You're able to dive in, you're very happy, you stab, you force your opponent to actually militarily respond. When you're playing abbasses against England, or anything against England, really, longbows are all about, like, the conceptualization behind the strategy is you reach in and poke, right? You never actually commit because you're a squishy unit going under a TC. But you can actually, like, linger just out of the range of the town center and probably snipe people still on the deers and the sheep in front of it. So the whole concept for KauP is he wants to try and create these breaks in that movement, right? He doesn't want to allow BageTT to snipe his gold line and then instantly go on his food line and then go on his stone line and then come around through his wood line. He wants to force the situation where he goes to the wood line, he tries to snipe someone, and when that fails, he has to run all the way around to get to the back on the other side of the wood line, or come around the back here for food. And that's a really smart play that you'll see out of a lot of high-level players up against England, is just identifying this and then playing around your timings. And with a second TC down, a mill being dropped, oh, there it is. He finally gets it. A little bit delayed, so some value lost there, but he will double up the berry bushes. But yes, he is going to double the capacity of this. He's going to be condensed underneath the protection of his TCs. He's scaling his economy better already, and it means that with horsemen now coming out and him being able to support them, he will also be able to reach a point where he can crack castle, which, as we said, is the win condition for the Abbasids. But Precious Mountain. BageTT is now bringing out the spears after he sees the horsemen have been spammed, and he's dropping the outposts. These outposts that do give an attack speed buff, it's around the 14 to 16% mark, if I recall correctly. It might be about 14.8 or 15.8% attack speed buff for longbows when the network of castles triggers. It's not the full 25% we were promised, but it's still a nice juice up in your attack speed, and will give you the edge. The other detail as well is it's not just that you have this secondary TC which allows you to scale up, by the way, with the Abbasids. It's also the fact that replacing the lost units doesn't suck as hard, right? It doesn't tend to slow you down compared to other civs as much, because although you're losing additional gathering, you're not paying much to replace what you've lost, right? That's that thing that I think when people talk about HRE and the Power Palace of Swabia, it's one detail they actually forget. It's not just the fact that it functions as 4 TCs, building villages every 5 seconds. It's the fact that it discounts them to 12 food. It's barely any hit into your economy, which means that these units become very expendable, right? You can be a little bit more risky. Right now, BageTT showing no signs of scaling up, and this is usually what we see out of a lot of these England players. Siege engineering already invested in, and the horsemen are cutting him off. Now, they do outnumber the spearmen, and that's good. I like this move. He can't directly engage near the outpost, so all he needs to do is try to pick off reinforcements to slow down BageTT's point of approach. And BageTT, now that he's got limited numbers, he says, screw it, I'm going. Starts to build into the battering ram. BageTT, not enough for a second one just yet, but look at the raids coming in from the horsemen. Stab-ins. Stabs come back at him, though. The spearmen come out, and big mistake. KauP, that was not the way to play this. He needed to just hold the choke point between the two, look to stab a few out as they try to reinforce across, and use the stealth forest to your edge and your advantage to achieve that. I think if you snipe out 4 or 5 longbowmen here, it becomes very uncomfortable for BageTT to reach that critical mass. But now that you've lost so many horsemen, you can't hold it anymore, and you're seeing how he's failing in that regard. Meanwhile, on the back line, KauP even more greedy. But I do like this. It means that if you... So the whole concept behind this, right, is like you could have all these villagers on these berry bushes here. But if this eco line ever gets shut down, all your economy hits to a halt, right? By doing this with a few villagers in the back line and then putting them out to maybe other gold lines, etc., it means that even if you're being harassed early by an England player, you will have gains elsewhere, right? You won't have your economy fully grind to a halt. It's a very underrated strategy because people don't want to invest the initial wood of 50 for each of these drop-off locations. But I think it's very lucrative to do in this type of situations where you aren't going to field a big enough army to defend with. KauP, I think the big mistake made here was revealing the Horseman. I think the best play he could have made is what we've been seeing out of a few players is they waypoint the Horseman into their TC. You stack them all inside your TC, and then you just ambush your opponent with it in the last moment when they're not ready, right? When you've stacked up to 10. Because 10 is a very solid number if you're racing towards at the same pace as BageTT's racing towards longbow spam. And it's unlikely he gets enough spearmen out, or maybe doesn't even have spearmen because he hasn't seen a counter needed yet to counter that attack. And if you did have, say, 10 horsemen, and we were talking about like 30 longbows, it takes no time at all to run them through. With your superior movement speed, your bonus damage, they do not last long. Rams coming in. BageTT, not looking to wait around. These TCs, remember, they're very flimsy. 2.4k HP, not like the main. They don't have 7,000. And it means it will not take long to get through this. This will be a big hit as well. KauP won't be able to replace this if he does lose it. Remember, his stone is on the front line here. It's all exposed. And KauP, showing no signs of trying to counterattack right now, it would be a very big deal if he was to sacrifice this TC. So he needs to go. And here they come, riding out. Villagers across. I don't know if they're going to be quick enough, though. It's going to be close. There's the attack speed buff coming out, but he's scared. He turns around. He has to deal with the battering rams. The battering rams, are they going to get it, though? Oh, my God. It's so close. They can't finish it. TC's going to survive. However, your archers are being picked off by the longbows, and now your horsemen have to run away because he garrisoned the spears inside the battering ram. And now he's onto the villagers, and this is going to be a big hit. Not only half the army already been gone for BageTT, but soon as eco count going to feel the dents. Longbows backing up, start stepping away from the horsemen. The horsemen are in, spears pursuing over, trying to counter this out and get as ready to stab through as many of these low horsemen as possible. And that's the horseman army gone. Villagers push out. Ram is able to back off. Spears will force the archers back, and longbows still have the count. And all of a sudden, KauP is back to step one, and no ground has been gained. Meanwhile, BageTT, how are we looking right now? They are neck and neck. He put such a dent into the eco. All the advantage of this second TC is already dried up. And he can't gather on food anymore. Needs to push more people to the back berry bush line. He even dropped an outpost because he's paranoid. But his army, it's not stockpiling enough troops to be able to push out against this. I don't think he's able to support this anymore, in fact. Look at the income. He needs a lot of wood right now, folks. He's got 2 archery ranges. They cost 50 wood each. I don't think he's going to be able to keep up the point surplus, because now he has 3 archery ranges. Like, he can sustain 2, but he needs 3 to keep up with the longbow spam, right? Because the numbers are already in BageTT's favor, and he produces them every 7 seconds out of this council hall. Here we go again. In with the repairs. Instantly going to be punished. The longbows move into position. Textiles will not help against this many bows. And the ram will give its final knock, and that's the TC gone. BageTT probably looking to invest into more of these battering rams soon. But the good news is he's slowed down his opponent. And this is frustrating right now. So KauP kind of locked in. BageTT has flexibility. He can either try to fall back and tech up, knowing his opponent doesn't have the scalability of his economy anymore, or he just looks to double barrel him in the face with these battering rams and look to end the game now. And I'm a bigger fan of the latter, because I think there are games where there's value in backing off and just taking a later time as England, but this is not one of them. KauP has missed all of his timings. His army isn't big enough, and he's not going to be able to easily recover. And although you could look to scale, why would you give him a chance to get back in this game when you know that right now he's unable to match you militarily and thus will have to forfeit more ground? BageTT going the long way around here. I'm not the biggest fan of this, but I understand why he's doing it. Remember, when you go for the main TC, you can't, like, you can't avoid it, right? He can target you instead. Because remember, one of the changes they made stealthily is that town centers can target something other than rams, right? So if rams come in range and someone else comes in range, you can select that unit to attack. It means these longbows will be picked apart. So it's a very contained and disciplined choice coming out of BageTT. It's going to give a lot of time over to KauP, but because KauP no longer has that secondary TC, it's not going to be that big of a risk to wrap this slowly around the back. And look what he's going to find as well. This is bad. KauP, he's stuck in this corner right now. And BageTT knows it. He has a scout here. So he saw the villagers run over here earlier. He sees the infrastructure. He sees everything exposed. And now he's going to look to punish it. Moving in. 2 Rams moving onto that outpost. Archer count still clearly in favor of BageTT. And the movement out is going to be very underwhelming. Villagers going to start being picked off. 4, 5 of them rather being garrisoned inside this. And when they come out, it is not going to be a fun party for them. And with double ram, it's not going to take them long at all. They bail out. 2 or 3 more definitely getting picked off here. Even with the textiles, this many longbow just cut right through you like a knife through butter. And now the count's looking scary. BageTT up at 45. KauP now down at 34. This was not the plan. And I don't think you can sustain it any longer. He's going to try to recover, right? He's only got 1 play. He needs to get a second TC and look to go again. In the meantime, he needs to move right across, and he needs to stab straight into BageTT's economy while he's away from home. This is the leverage you have against England. Remember, they are a very static civ. The problem he has right now is there's a big enough force here that they will get through your base before you get through theirs. And that's the sacrifice he's looking to make. And he never completed these walls either. Big mistake. KauP, no. Maybe if he buys a bit of time, he gets some shot of this, but now this is going to be too late. This move doesn't work anymore. The Rams are already moving in. The villagers are backing off, which means you have no one collecting wood right now. Meanwhile, right in. KauP going in deep. Villagers going to back off entirely here and look at the move in. The Rams are shuffling forward, realizing that the army is away from base. And this is where the mistake was made. KauP, remember, he doesn't have any siege weapons yet. And he's trying to get them up now, but it's going to be too late. Keep in mind that he also can't afford multiple Rams because he was forced off onto the other side to set up a new tree line. And this is desperation. He's dropping a stone wall. But I don't know if it's going to be good enough. The Rams are going to continue their work. He needs to actually increase the number of Rams. Remember, BageTT has been stunted in that regard. He can't get out and gather on the wood line right now, courtesy being forced back. And that's why he's on straggler trees. Meanwhile, on the main base, Stonewall Tower is finally complete. And the amount of villagers being sniped! So many of them trying to actually just garrison inside, but the losses are heavy. TC down to half HP already. And look, it's too late and KauP knows it. And this choice might cost him dearly. He's forced to retreat away. And by the time he arrives back in his base, the town center is going to be a pile of rubble on the ground. And here come the Villies. The desperation has definitely sunk in. One of the Rams is going to fall. Spearmen hold them back from getting on the second one, though, and they cannot stand and repair this. The army still far away from home. 25 archers about to run into the 34 longbows. And just a small hand of spears can hold back these horsemen if they brace. And here it comes. In position, BageTT. Not even microing the spears. They're just dedicated to taking out the TC. He doesn't need them. The horsemen are already dead. The spears are going to be picked off in the meantime by the archers. And the panic repair comes out. The horsemen wrapping around for the side. BageTT stuck in the middle of the sandwich, but there might be too much meat to the bread. And that composition means that you might as well have just had a plate of meat. As the horsemen are gone, longbows are microing better here. Villagers have to actually dedicate their attention onto the Ram, and they're equal numbers on the military front. In fact, still an advantage for BageTT. 5 longbows up is good enough. The GG will come out, and BageTT will take game 1. Yeah, really well played actually coming out of BageTT. I don't think this was like anything innovative out of England, but it's still credit to him the way he kind of pushed around. I think a lot of players would have dove into the TC too soon, and they would have been punished amply for doing so. But I like the way that he wrapped around looking for the pocket ecos. The pocket ecos that he actually spotted out due to the scouting. This is the truth of RTSs. Scouting wins games. Vision wins games. There's a reason why even in Age of Empires, they literally will sacrifice one of their eco units to go and discover what their opponents are doing. And we just saw exactly why. Getting that information, getting that info on the download gives you that exploitable element to your opponent's gameplay, right? Like when he's playing a little bit too loose like that because he thinks that it's the last place you're going to look with a static army, that vision gives you the move that would usually be suboptimal to gamble on, right? It's not like you're playing France and you can randomly ride around the back and hope that you find someone there. When you're playing a slow-moving force like England, every single one of your moves has to be clear and it has to be done with reasoning, yeah? You don't have that time to just splurge and waste efforts left, right, and center. And that is why having that scout there, getting that info, is the critical detail that gives him control. Because at that point, there's no recovery for KauP. KauP is too far in the gutter, and it's very important that he shuts KauP out, because if that TC runs for a few minutes, the lead is so big that KauP does reach into Castle. And remember what we said, winning against England's Abbasids is Castle. As soon as you crack Castle, the game almost feels impossible to win. And because he never achieves that condition, BageTT just rides all the way to the bank. But that's only game 1, guys. Remember, these are BO3s. We are about ready to get into game number 2. That's right, no wait at all. Because, of course, we were a little bit delayed, a few minutes getting in. It means we are already ready with game number 2. And game number 2 will be a mirror matchup on Danube River, as both of them will take to the river as the Delhi. And here it is. Gonna have KauP in the north, BageTT in the south. BageTT now 1 game away from booting KauP out of this tournament very early. And, well, with the way he played that last game, he definitely knows how to set the tempo. But does he now know how to handle his timings? Because remember, it's not as much about tempo setting in these mirror matchups. It's about understanding and exploiting those timings around your techs, right? You're usually talking about lane to feudal, up into castle. That's what you're looking for as the Delhi. And when you're talking about being on the river as well, I think the critical details is early outpost spamming and controlling the intersections via palisading. This is going to be the details that decide this matchup. More often than not, Danube does come down to water control, especially when you're talking about one-on-ones, and especially when you're talking about Delhi on Delhi. It's such a big lead to have if you block your other opponent out that it makes it almost impossible for them to bounce back. And also, there's no flexi option, right? Remember when we have France on France and one player's behind? There is a flexi option of going the Royal Institute at Castle Age because you get access to superior tech. The tech option isn't good for the Delhi because Honed Blades, which can be a very powerful tool, takes too long to research. So it's not that kind of I gotcha and I'm going to recover now. Instead, Combine the Defenders was kind of meant to be that. But Combine the Defenders, as we've seen, has become the default de facto choice. And keep in mind, in a game where also these sacred sites are very exploitable and the river is such a big deal, if you ever do fall behind, the combination of Sacred Site and Compounded Defender will give one player clear and definitive control of this game quickly. That's why we will look onto the river to see what's happening. So, KauP already dropping the dock. Equally matched. Interesting come out from BageTT. This is very defensive, but this is very intentional as well. Notice he drops it just to the north of this crossing, meaning that in the event that he feels too pressured or he doesn't get the wall out on the central piece first, he now has a fallback option where he can easily palisade here and block his opponent from reaching. Take note of this, guys. This is a very underrated move and very impressive out of BageTT. A lot of players would have immediately moved out to the shoreline closest to them, thinking about the efficiency logic, right? And that is a big kind of bait and switch detail, right? Like, it's very easy to get fixated on that detail, and it's something we've highlighted in previous series. Because one player always spawns in the north or to like the northeastern corner of the map, and then the other one spawns the central area, right? So sometimes we'll see, for example, the southern player will be over here, and then this northern player will be centralized here. It's a very tough decision to make on whether you should go straight onto the water or look for a more defendable location. And the whole concept is the person who's already back in the corner, they have a position that's very hard to assault, and they have a natural way to easily block it off. Meanwhile, the player who's on the front, especially when you talk about these different matchups like Delhi versus X or China versus X, the player who's actually a little bit further forward, HRE is another example of this, they get the option to dictate flow over the map a bit better. But I appreciate that BageTT, understanding he's one game away from eliminating his first opponent, doesn't need to necessarily play the first 5 to 10 minutes too risky. And to be honest, that's usually how that Delhi start goes. It's very much a gamble, even when you're trying to be micro-intensive, when you have equal fishing boats and you're going towards your opponent. Not to mention the fact that you don't want to go towards your opponent, because even if you start further up the river, the amount of time it takes you to arrive in their base, they have 1 or 2 more fishing boats than you, and they have the healing factor on the home front. So it's just not feasible to Delhi fishing boat rush against Delhi. But it is feasible to do the outpost spam, and that's what I'm looking for, especially in these corners, is exploitable value. I think that's another reason why BageTT didn't play towards the corner. If you remember, if you play towards the south side, it puts him further away from the central island unless he runs into neutral ground. He has to run all the way up here, right? And the importance of this is the difference allows for KauP to quickly move in and drop an outpost on the corner here to snipe out your boats quicker than you can actually get an outpost down yourself to defend it. And it's important you don't allow those outposts to go down, because remember, they do bonus damage to ships. Normally it's 10 damage, but they add in an extra 25 when attacking boats. And remember that your fishing boats have 0 ranged armor, so they take the full damage. So you can doing some damage. Scouts just trying to actually harass a little. I like this play out of KauP. BageTT, did he actually match him? Ooh, Baguette. I think so, yeah. So he got the 2 scouts as well. He's not using them to raise anything. Some games, you do have the option of using your scouts to try and burn down your opponent's dock. This is not one of those matchups. If you go anywhere near the dock, the fishing boats will snipe you down pretty quickly. You're a 110 health unit with no range resistance. It's not worth even attempting. But if you can harass in the economy, it's quite nice. Even if you stun him off the goal line a little bit, that will give you the edge, and we can see it already in the numbers. KauP, because he's happily gathering away in his base, and because he forced Baguette off the goal line once or twice as he fell back, he knows he can confidently tech up quicker. And Baguette, I feel like he's made a mistake here. Unless he intends to go for a second dock, I don't like the surplus wood he was holding there. He had too many people on the wood line at this point in the game. And in fact, when we look at the difference between these two, that's where it is. 3 more people than KauP has. And it means that KauP will be quicker to tech up. And just standard here. Nothing different coming out from either side. I expect Dome of Faith all the way. The whole concept behind Tower of Victory does sound cool, right? Getting that 15% bonus attack speed permanently on any units, any infantry that go nearby, does sound pretty dope, but what you have to realize is what you're giving up. At an early point in the game, your researchers are very slow, so any availability to boosting that is very much welcome. But the usual price of 150 gold for each of your scholars is too much. That's why you need this Dome of Faith. It enables you to actually go into a little bit of tech booming in the mid-game, right? Courtesy of having a banked mosque. At the same time, it also gives you that flexibility to move out and control sacred sites, whereas if you had to pay 150 gold for these units each, that's very risky. That's a big loss in your economy if they ever get sniped, and you don't get the same risk-reward factor that, say, the HRE do, right? Well, the HRE have another use for their prelates in buffing up their economy early, and when they do build them, it only costs 100 gold, and then also, if they do get the reward they're looking for, aka the relics, they get 300 gold per minute, compared to you getting 100 gold per minute or 200 gold per minute if you have Sanctity researched. Military efficiency is currently being researched. Baguette does actually beat KauP up in the end. It looks like he invested a lot more people into building up into this age. Really impressive. I don't know if Baguette done this intentionally, understanding who was behind. It's not going to immediately change the game just because getting access to DAOs doesn't necessarily break the water for either side, and the walls are already going down from KauP. So I think really the big primary goal here is to get access to the Castle Age, and if you're able to boost a little bit quicker into that, via getting those tech ups first and maybe unlocking additional techs quicker, then more power to him. So does sacrifice a little bit of economy by putting more people on. Remember, the more people you put onto building something, the less value you get. It's not a direct scalar. If I add in 5 people, it's not 5 times quicker on the build speed. It decreases the value the more people invested. So he did actually lose a bit of early economy there. The question is whether KauP can use that advantage in any way. And I think with this outpost already in place from Baguette, it's not going to be the case. Really well played. Also, the scouts moving out. And they're going to see the villager out in the middle of no man's land, so he's going to lose the Villi. He's going to try and get the walls up first, understanding he's going to die here. And if Baguette animation cancels this, he won't even be able to block his opponent off. And this isn't a good block off anyway. And he's committing as well. I think you might be able to sneak through here. Not to mention he's only 150 health, so although you'll get a heads up that your opponent's coming, you won't be able to block them. There we go, outpost now down. Villager is going to move in. And then in terms of range, I don't think he quite has the range to hit the fishing boats, but he can do the crawling, right? Although outposts are pricey, 100 wood each at this stage in the game, if you get one slap right here and you invalidate this dock entirely, you're pretty confident about your game stay. And it's something that hasn't been matched by KauP, and I'm kind of disappointed in him. He's bringing 5 villagers out now. I wonder what his intent is. I feel like he should have been wise to this move, and he should have done something to counter out. I don't think he had an option to assault his own opponent, right? Like, he wasn't on the corner like we talked about. He would have had to ran deep. And I think his issue is that Baguette is already in position before him, so he didn't want to gamble on sending a villager all the way directly close to where Baguette's power is centralized right now. Here you go, Dao coming out. And nice outpost being dropped by KauP, so we'll have ample protection against this Dao over time. Fails the garrison quick enough, though, so we'll be a little bit frustrated. But remember, these fishing boats are not disarmed. They're not helpless. They can defend themselves with 7 damage each shot. And it looks like, I like this out KauP, he's not being forced to prioritize the Daos right now, right? He just invests in more fishing boats. This is smart. Until Baguette shows a clear intent of like 3 or 4 Daos, you shouldn't actually react to it too aggressively. Not to mention the fact that you have an outpost down, so your economy is protected. There's no easy way for Baguette to dive in because of the short range on these Daos, remember. They only fire at less than 4 tower range. more scouts just getting eyeballs. They're seeing a lot of gold being gathered. Yep, he already knows what KauP's up to. But look at BageTT's numbers. BageTT is actually going to reach the Castle Age at a similar timing. It's really smart that he identifies this by wrapping around. Once again, just another game where BageTT is on point with his scouts, and it is going to make a difference here. It means he knows he can ramp up pressure a lot if he wants, or he can flex and go up for a tech up himself. And it looks like KauP is already making his own choice in that matter. Compounder Defender currently being built. BageTT still not there yet. Actually stunted a little bit on the food. And there we go. BageTT finally getting there a little bit later than he would have liked. But he banks a lot of gold alongside it, and he is underway with the House of Learning. Wow. Okay, this is a very abnormal choice. Typically, we only see the House of Learning when someone else has committed to it first. But because he's the second person to go for it, now BageTT has given himself an ultra late game timing that is superior to KauP's. Now, don't get me wrong, the Compounder Defender remains with decent value throughout the game, right? The discount alone on stone structures is quite nice. The difference maker here, however, is if this game now drags out to, say, the 30-minute mark, BageTT's going to have a clear edge courtesy of Honed Blades. This is a very big gamble, but if he feels like he can stalemate the game, and right now with his position on the Central Island, he does think that's the case, then he can cruise through to an easy 2-0 in that late game scenario. Well, everything just starting to be in flames for BageTT right now. And KauP, I wonder if it's going to identify this. Right now, BageTT just keeping the pressure on the Villies. Oh, the block in. They've turned on him. Not allowed to ride a horse in the base of KauP. It's against the rules. Now KauP dropping the archery range, ready to rock and rumble. He's going towards the Tower Elephants already. Meanwhile, on the other side, it is going to be similarity match. We are just going to get the weirdest Duke out, as usual. Of course, like we said, the edge that should be there for KauP is he's going to be able to build up stone wall defenses to try and block off near the sacred sites, which is where the priority is going to be. Although right now, BageTT, I won't hold what he's doing against him if he starts to build heavy into the fleet. If he doesn't, then I really am not a fan of this House of Learning. I think it's going to like trip you up. You can see already it's going to take him 22 minutes unless he builds even more moss and fills them up. And I don't expect him to fill the moss up too quickly. You can see actually this one's completely empty at this point. He's trying to replace it because he has moved the scholars out. I like this move at least coming out from BageTT, but like I said, he has to play into Bagglers here. The Bagglers are actually pretty good in the Delhi matchup on Danube, courtesy of controlling the crossing points, right? The crossing points where you can snipe a lot of damage to the Tower Elephants, I think is a big trick missed if you don't go for it. Now just getting his own walls up. Nice play. I like that. Control the flow there, then prioritize all the tension on land. Has already got the outpost in position. All right, guys, hear me out. Imperial Age tech, nitrous canisters for elephants. Elephants with roller skates. Okay, I'm going to stop. I'm just going to stop. Nice snipe out. You stop the outpost going up. That's a big deal. BageTT was trying to sneak this in, but he was seen at all times. I think they actually got eyeballs on him with the fishing boat. So nice move out of KauP there. Gives him some control on the Central Island. I don't like the way BageTT kind of gave that over for free. I think it's too obvious what you're trying to do with this outpost. Wait until you got reinforcements in place. Why not drop a full archery range and operate off of that? Because I think one of the big mistakes that I see a lot of these players make, in the Delhi on Delhi matchup anyway, is they stick their archery ranges back in base. And then they make their elephants run all the way across the map. And they never tend to have the number advantage due to that, right? By the time they're pushing their opponent's base, they're either matched or outnumbered by their opponent. So it's one of those weird examples where because players play a very defensive style with their military districts, you end up with a situation where the person who strikes first tends to lose more often than not, right? Because if you're even, Stevens, piece for piece in a match, it means that you're always going to be one behind when you're on the home field. So really the only time I'm okay with this very defensive military base is when you have taken a clear and decisive lead. And in fairness to him, he has right now. We should probably actually label it. He has got a Sacred Site victory now triggered and counting down. So let me just quickly flick that one in. I think that was around the, I want to say 13-minute mark. It's probably been, it's probably got, like, it's probably before that. It's probably got less time to wait, but I missed that detail when we were nerding out about Delhi on Delhi. And a switch up. Look at this coming out from KauP. KauP went into the War Elephant as well. An interesting choice. He's going to be up against Spears, but it does a lot of damage against this small quantity. Needs to be careful those initial stabs so you can see how hard that hit immediately. Needs to get some scholars out here. I like what BageTT's doing. Zonal control, remember, you need to actually get as much control around these sacred sites as possible, and he doesn't have the same flexibility as KauP. It's important that he never lets KauP sit on this island, because if he ever does, with Compounded Defender, he will quickly build up a stone wall fleet that will push you off of the island. And it's something that you can't match as BageTT, because remember, the player in red here chose House of Learning. So he doesn't have the option to allow his infantry to build into these walls. The interesting part on the other side is that KauP hasn't actually built any infantry yet, so he can't build the stone walls either. BageTT. Just trying to keep eyeballs on the side, see if there's any eco expansions. I like this player. Once again, it's similar to the first game, right? He's looking for that greed factor. He's trying to understand when KauP overextends himself and runs out of resources that feel safe or close. And once that happens, it opens up more possibilities. You could invest in a few lancers, you could flank around the side, and you could really put a huge dent in his economy. Because right now, you aren't able to do so, courtesy of the fact the elephants took out these outposts, and now the fishing fleet is unhindered. A nice move out of KauP. KauP, respecting how last game went, will protect his expansion. That's an important detail. A lot of players wouldn't do this in this situation. Especially against Delhi, right? When you're Delhi on Delhi, you know your opponent's building elephants, so usually you kind of get, I'd say, a heads up. A heads up is like an understatement. You basically get a carrier pigeon delivering a clear message and a band running through the streets singing about the enemy army coming. Because elephants are not fast. They take 1,000,001 years to arrive, right? A body would roll down a hill quicker than these guys would get across a map. Now, admittedly, I didn't say how big the hill was, but I'm surprised you guys didn't question the fact that I've got a body stored somewhere. And now crossbows also coming out, so stacking up a little bit. No real composition out of KauP. I mean, yes, he's got these war elephants, but the spear's already in play. That can work against him a bit. Waddle out now. I think this is going to approach a stalemate, by the way. Like I said, neither of them are playing to win, really. There's no forward base. I mean, I say that. BageTT's kind of playing this static hold, but I think you're invested at this point. With the amount of outposts you're dropping and the fact you're all in on the sacred sites, I would love to just see you drop a forward military base. I think it'd be a big difference maker here. And instead, he's engaging with inferior numbers. As KauP has the quicker route across. Remember the distance being covered here. Look how quickly he can get to battle. Meanwhile, when we look at the long distance which BageTT has to cover here, it doesn't work out for him. And now he's losing the battle. Spearwood upgrade, trying to help as best it can. And the Terror Elephant will back up. It's too late for him. However, this outpost will be mashed into the ground. Wood into paper mache, my friends, as it is gone. And the numbers are still against BageTT. BageTT shouldn't even be turning for a second. Instead, he's just going to sacrifice some crossbows by doing so. And he's going to be forced off the center island. And now it's going to allow for KauP to decap this sacred site. Bagler's coming out. Finally, this is what we needed. BageTT, this is way too late, though. I feel like if you'd done this before when you had central control and you pushed through and broke down the walls, you could have dictated flow here. You could have blocked the passing, and you could have allowed easy cruise through into a victory on the sacred sites. But now you've given the edge to KauP. KauP is on the island, and now you're out of position. And because he's seen the Baglers, he can react with his own if he chooses. BageTT now up to 3 docks compared to the 3 on the other side. But is there a bit more spread? So BageTT should have optimal drop-off 10 minutes from now, whereas KauP is going to probably need another dock in a more aggressive location. But for now, that's not his priority. But now his priority is just going to be clumping up as many elephants as possible. As you can see, the game continues to push out. If we look at the income situation, BageTT clearly has the edge on the food, but KauP is gathering more of the gold. The difference maker here is that actually BageTT went hard into wood. It looks like he's planning to scale the Bagler fleet. And I'm a big fan of this. I think also boom ships. Just get a few boom ships and dictate flow around the choke points, right? If you ever catch the elephants out of position and you get up in Imperial as well, these units are so slow and the boom ships are so quick that you can actually move in and detonate on half an army of elephants and just instantly get rid of them. A nice move out of KauP. Remember that this doesn't cost as much as it would cost BageTT. Another power of the Compounded Defender, right, is it only costs 600 stone compared to the 800. It's giving him an edge here. Means he's able to be more efficient. He's almost ready to afford a second keep if he chooses. But for now, it's all about just stabilizing control in the center because he has no intent of playing towards the south side where it's already walled in and it's just too far away. Elephants moving in. And with the keep down, they will have to move out quickly. Oh, no! Okay, the War Elephant will just about get away. And nice play bringing the Scholars out. A lot of players don't do this. Really big mistake. You end up with surplus scholars quite quickly, and it's quite efficient, right? If you're able to just get a few scholars costing 75 gold each, and they save you an investment that costs you 1,000 resources total, it's totally worth it. And it doesn't take long between battles to heal up either. In fact, let's watch the health. 3 of these scholars, 212 health, and look how quickly it is going up. At least when they're not moving. In the meantime, KauP, I love this play. Not enough players do this. He drops the forward keep on the sacred site and then moves in for the resources. A lot of players keep for resources, but they don't tend to keep for sacred sites and then hang around for the resources. Mainly because that area is going to be hotly contested soon. But he doesn't care. He's like, I have no intent of losing this ground. If I lose this ground, I'm probably losing the game anyway. So he holds strong. In the meantime, taking out one of the docks that belong to BageTT. And now keep coming down from BageTT. He needs to get in position quick for this. This could be intercepted. KauP looking to stonewall now. And this could be problematic. It could give him the edge, clearly. He needs to move right now, or this will be constructed. And as it stands, KauP does not know what's going on. The Stealth Forest, look how close it is. BageTT, with the pristine placement here, is going to get a foothold again on the center island. But it hasn't dealt with the Sacred Site situation. He needs access to that condition still. Still no signs of either side being able to tech up an Imperial. You don't want to in this situation. Until you're pop capped, trying to go for Imperial is a risk. The reason it's a risk, guys, is because the moment your opponent sees it, he's going to push. And he's going to push hard. Because he's going to understand, for you to actually have gathered enough resources at this stage to reach Imperial when he's nowhere nearby, you must have sacrificed military production. But as it stands right now, KauP, although he continues to increase, notice he's leaving room, and it looks like he is heading for that attempt into Imperial. And this could be very dangerous. Nice move out of BageTT, though. He's going for the base. This could be a big play if he's quick about it. However, if he gets cut off, he could lose the army. Still no boom ships coming out. Only fishing boats. And it looks like he's going to back off as he sees the response force coming out from KauP. But he's not done yet. Remember, if you get on top of these docks, they die in the blink of an eye. You're able to actually animation cancel pretty effectively with the Tusk attacks and very quickly just dispatch any building in front of you. It's kind of absurd that it works still. I mean, you can say it's a micro skill, but even if you try to argue, like, oh, it's cool having micro elements in the game, it's quite nuts the damage these lads do. I'm not saying get rid of it. Maybe fix all the bugs with Delhi first, so at least they function fully as a civ. But yeah, then maybe we need to put it on the negotiation table. Here we go. Still no boom. There it is. Boom ship now coming out. BageTT, he's going to get paid like by this KauP. It's too obvious, though. Boom ship's going to come out. It's moving in right now. BageTT, he needs to back up. He's not doing it, though. It's shifting for us in. It's on top. KauP, he detonates. Heavy hit there. Front line of elephants take the brunt of the fire. The front line of spears and crossbows take a dent as well. However, KauP, he was so delayed in the way that he done that, he didn't get the min-max value. And I don't think he manually detonated either. Remember, manual detonation seems to do more damage, so missed opportunity there, and it means BageTT will hold. And I guess in this situation, ignorance really is bliss because he should have lost a lot more for that. I mean, yes, there was some heavy damage on 1 or 2 of these elephants, but it really felt inconsequential. If you manually detonate that, the damage almost doubles up, if I remember correctly. And considering that the elephants were at the center of that blast, you'd be talking about half HP on half your elephants, and that's a point where KauP can actually run at home and kill you off. Missed opportunity. And now look at the numbers. BageTT, this is the comfort situation, right? This is what we're talking about. You need either a big lead or you need to be pop capped to scale up past your opponent. And because of that fight and because of what KauP just done there, failing to take the win, failing to actually wipe BageTT's army and instead taking a lot of casualties, now it's BageTT looking to tech up and underway already. I believe he is doing it over here, yeah. So Palace of the Sultan, remember, this is the one that actually spams out elephants, and as you have more skulls in it, it does it more regularly, and they are produced for free. So there's going to be a big advantage, one that KauP can't easily access. If he chooses to go Imperial Age as soon as he sees his opponent's done it, it's not going to allow him to exploit the weakness of BageTT, and BageTT right now, having central island control and blocking him off from reaching his keep location, could be a big deal breaker. And you can see that KauP is currently doubling down on the fortifications here. He doesn't want to enable BageTT to go into that Sacred Site victory now that he took such a bad fight at the Strait. BageTT now more keeps going down. Outpost really good at choking out control from KauP. KauP has a very finite amount of fish available to him. Meanwhile, BageTT has all of this to pick dry, right? You can see he's now starting to be prevented on the keeps. Third keep now being dropped by KauP. We talked about this efficiency, right? Going for the Compounded Defender gives you a lot more bang for buck. There's a lot more surplus stone in your reserves for the same level of control. And it means that BageTT, he's probably like to run out of resources for spamming keeps much sooner than KauP ever will, which is why it's important that he secures these stone deposits, because I think this is going to come down to keep control between these two civs. And there it is, tech up complete. BageTT should be underway with the researchers. Let's have a look. Is he looking for any transition? Yes, there it is. Siege Elephant now coming. Okay, that actually could be a big deal here. And he's even spamming man-at-arms now. They're coming out in elite status soon as well. It's about to get spooky. But KauP, how quickly did he match that timing? Did not wait around too long, gets his tech up himself, and it's also going to be Palace of the Sultan, so we'll be producing those war elephants once again. And still no Forced March coming out. Forced March could actually be pretty handy here for getting you out of pickle. I'm expecting to see it very soon, and yeah, it has already been taken by BageTT. This is really smart. This is the power of this, actually. He's spamming into the man-at-arms right now. Man-at-arms, which are, I believe, heading into the center area. And the cool thing about these man-at-arms is you can actually very quickly just speed past and reach the crossbow lines. And if you remove the crossbow lines from KauP, it's actually hard for him to prioritize a lot of DPS onto individual elephants, right? He's just mainly relying on the tower elephants attacking from range. That's kind of the detail that matters here, right? Like, the only civ that has that variable that increases their melee damage potential is the Abbassids, where the Abbassids get access to the phalanx, and then they have 2 lines of spears stabbing, right? Compared to most civs being stuck on 1 line. But in this situation, actually having that edge should allow you to snipe out additional troops, just because you'll be able to wrap in with your man-at-arms with Forced March, get on top of the crossbows, and wipe them before they can react. And that's something that isn't available on the other side, because KauP has not prioritized this research at all. Now Bombard's coming out. Bit of pressure, poking and prodding them away. A lot of gold has been picked by KauP on the central island. Definitely got his bang for buck. Stone also being extracted by BageTT in the north. So he can afford to lose 1 or 2 keeps here. And these cannons are frustrating. The Scholar's taking a lot of damage, but a lot of healing coming out as well. They'll bait him in. He moves forward, a little bit out of position. Bombards starting to snipe, and it looks like BageTT does have the edge. However, I think he's outnumbered 2 Bombards to the 1, so he's going to lose his before he gets a good trade. And the repairs are too good. Bombard's going to heal up. Uh-oh. Big mistakes being made there. And now you're in a little bit of a pickle. He tries to hold the front line. The assistance of the keeps is making the difference, and KauP now, even with the Baglers here, is starting to lose his elephants quicker. You can see the difference maker. The Bombards are not really having a big enough effect. I did hear somewhere, read somewhere in fact, the cannons are the natural predators of the elephant, but it doesn't look that way in this game. It turns out the elephants have turned on the Bombards themselves, and they will snipe out one, force the other one back, and with the front line golden, the crossbowmen soon to fall. BageTT is repelling KauP's assault on the central island away. A few Baglers still standing here. If you get in range with the Tusk, though, they're not going to last long. And he has to back them up quickly. Focus fire's coming in, hanging around for a moment. Doesn't want to overstay his welcome, though. Wants to try and keep a few of these troops alive. Good heals coming out from BageTT to repair onto the Bombard. And now we'll back away after losing 1 more elephant, but the trade is good for him. KauP, in the meantime, losing 1 of these Bombards. I believe 1 was sniped down the other side as well. But now the numbers are rising quickly for BageTT. And BageTT, you can see on the income, he is very healthy compared to KauP. KauP, in the middle of transitions, needs new resources, switching over to a new woodline after picking this one dry. But the spread is better from BageTT, dropping 2 TCs at the back of his base, now sitting up 102 eco, while KauP is locked in at 79. This is the difference maker. He doesn't just look to invest all of his resources into a bigger army when he takes a slight lead in the fight. Instead, he understands that this is going to be a slog and it's going to turn into a resource battle like so many late game situations do. And if he's able to pick apart more of the map quicker than KauP is, it will give him the inherent edge either now or 50 minutes from now. And look what just completed. This is what we were waiting for. We talked about this, right? If BageTT can draw it out, and this is another detail, this is the beauty of the way he's crafted this. Not just the TCs, allowing him to scale, and the way he's controlled the Central Island, courtesy of all these keeps. It's the fact that now he has home blades, and he's been spamming man-at-arms. These man-at-arms are now juiced up. They are swole boys, 16 damage per strike. And KauP can never compare. Lancers will also not compare. He doesn't have the same qualitative options that BageTT has anymore. KauP was definitely on the clock, and he failed to break the clock, and all of a sudden, he's stuck in a time loop. A time loop that will end with his death over and over again at this rate, as he can never seem to get back on that Central Island. And now the Baglers, actually Zebex coming out. More like Webex, because they are just being laughed at right now. The Bombards with 10 tile range, you can never reach them. This was a very odd choice by KauP. I don't know what he was thinking, but those forts are sinking fast, along with his economy. 480 wood and 300 gold each, just to sail in circles, showing off how pretty you are. Another one falls. The Bagler can't do any damage, no range on that, remember. A pitiful 5-tile range, that's going to be sunk as well. And I think BageTT's done it. KauP, his army looks just inconsequential at this stage. The home blades in effect, so many elephants still up for BageTT, and now a superior force of bombards after you heavily invested in the pointless Zebex means you are just minutes away from losing this game. Maybe 10 minutes, in fact. We might be heading for that condition. Apologies, I just realized I never took down the Sacred Site timer. But that is going to come back into play in a sec. I'm just not sure if KauP's going to feel like he can hang around anymore. He's picked apart most of his close-by resources. He's going into Danger Town, and he's going into Danger Town with only one TC and an inferior army. And that's where he's going to start to suffer. BageTT turns around for the main fight. Keeps going to get cancelled. Moving in. No boom ship still. This would be a prime time if KauP wanted to do it, but he hasn't whipped out any. So unable to do anything. Instead, going to continue to lose the docks, and it looks like he's going to continue to lose the game. And KauP, this is the mistake. You can't go into Compound of Defenders and go this late. I don't think he ever spotted out that BageTT had dropped the House of Learning, but when you don't see any forward walling off the BageTT takes half the island, you have to assume what you're up against here. And it means you're on the clock. And that pressure, that panic works against KauP in conjunction with small missteps such as not manually detonating the bombs, will give the edge over to BageTT and will give him the series 2-0 to eliminate KauP quickly here on Danu. Well, I say eliminate him quickly. That was a fairly long game. It did turn into a bit of a slogfest, but that's kind of the way it goes when you allow Delhi to fall back like that. The plan is always for BageTT to win a lot later, right? He understands if he's going to House of Learning, he's vulnerable early on. And that's why BageTT pushes for early control of the Central Island. He wants to force all attention there instead of what's happening back at his base. And in conjunction between that and the walling that's coming out from him, blocking off palisading on the west side and the south side, it means there's never scout vision. Which means that although KauP can somewhat assume there is probably a House of Learning sitting in BageTT's base, he never knows for sure. And it means that he's going to have to roll the dice on whether he should push him blind past the territory of the keeps at any given time. And because he never seems to have the number advantage, he never actually has the manpower to get past those keeps. It becomes a sheer stalemate. And it means that BageTT achieves his win condition and then runs it through. His win condition was always 30 minutes. We point this out. And KauP, unable to identify this and unable to pivot or transition ahead of his opponent, meant he had no way of exploiting the weakness of House of Learning, which will reign supreme here on Danu River.